Tom Fitton is on with us from Judicial Watch to talk to us about yet another possible indictment on what is happening with Donald Trump. Will this ever end? Tom, welcome.
Hey, Glenn, good to be with you. Thank you.
So, first of all, I just have to say, I've talked to you a million times, and I've seen you several times, but are you lifting now? Because you look like you could snap my neck with your fingers.
It's all AI generated.
Oh, is it? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so is my fatness.
Right.
All right. So yesterday they came out. It looks like there may be another arrest of Donald Trump, another indictment. Right. Can you explain what is going on here and what is going on in Michigan as well, if you can?
Well, I think it's a coordinated Democratic Party operation to destroy the Republican Party using the awesome powers, and I don't use the word awesome in a positive way, but powerful powers of the prosecutorial offices at the state and federal level to arrest their leadership. I mean, that's what's going on in Michigan. Electors, or those who participated in disputing the election in Michigan, including Republican leaders, have been indicted, face the rest of their lives in jail potentially. What's going on here in Washington, D.C., is that the Jack Smith grand jury, after they indicted or moved to push an indictment of Trump on the sham document issue, is trying to prosecute him for, A, being president and questioning how federal elections were run, and B, being a candidate, exercising his rights under the First Amendment to dispute an election and figure out what legally could be done. And maybe they're trying to tie it to the January 6th incident as well. But, I testified to that grand jury, and I can tell you they spent a lot of time harassing me about First Amendment protected speech and electors and debates about that were taking place. And I remember thinking, despite the harassment, is why is all this being discussed in this context? This is a federal grand jury, and we're talking politics. We're talking party politics. It was like being in a CNN interview for 4 hours. And so it's no surprise, given their interest in partisan politics and debating me on the Constitution and federal election law, that they would take the next step and abuse their office further to try to jail Trump before the election.
So, what happens here? Are they really trying to jail him? Because you could still run for president in jail. And I have to tell you, I think there would be a lot of people that would wear a T-shirt proudly of his mugshot with the numbers under his face and just say, I voted for Trump. I voted for prisoner 14009. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that would do that because we see this as insanity and a banana republic.
Well, I mean, they're in the Miami case, which began in Washington, D.C. They moved it down to Miami. They were seeking a trial for December. Now, the judge may put that off a little bit, but it may still occur during election time. They were planning to try to get him prosecuted, finish the trial, and get him jailed around the time the primaries began. And now it's going to be potentially, it looks like, all the signals are there's going to be another arrest and indictment of Trump. I don't know how it's going to go here in D.C. They have a much more anti-Trump judicial bench up here. To me, all bets are off here in terms of the abuse of power and how far the Biden regime, they've officially became a regime, in my view, with the indictment of Trump, how far the Biden regime is willing to go. And again, Democrat prosecutor in the state of Michigan, a key state, obviously, for any election, has now just tried to arrest the Republican Party leadership or people close to him, most of whom seem to be in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
This is, and then on top of that, you have what's happening in New York City and Fulton County, Democrat prosecutor down there. And, my question is, Glenn, we can talk about how outrageous this is what's to be done about it? Are Republicans in the House going to exercise all the powers they have under the Constitution to rein this in, cut off funding to these local DAs and states that abuse the civil rights of their citizens, shut down the Jack Smith investigation, just defund it? I mean, there are things that can be done that they don't really want to talk about doing because, their fear-based leadership is their mantra.
Well, they better get over that quickly because this is the last election that they will have a chance of winning ever again if they don't start moving mountains here and actually cutting off the purse strings to the things that they can do and use every tool at its disposal. They keep talking about, well, we're thinking about contempt. We're thinking about holding you in contempt. Well, then hold them in contempt. Stop thinking about it. Hold them in contempt. The White House, one of the first executive orders was to do a government-wide look and plan on how to register new voters. And it was for every department in the government. Congress has asked for that plan and said, can we see what you guys are doing? They won't release it. Well, let's stop thinking about holding you in contempt and actually putting your ass in jail if you don't do what the other branch is telling you to do, that we have a right to see this. Show it to us. I really am very concerned about the integrity of our election. And if this stuff isn't stopped with Donald Trump, we're turning into Venezuela.
That's right. And they don't want, you remember, they're punishing folks for disputing the 2020 election. And what better way to ensure that doesn't happen again and that no one questions the 2024 election or really doesn't want to participate in any significant way is to jail the political leadership of the party that challenged Biden. This is, to me, kind of a search and destroy mission against the Republican Party. That grand jury, according to reports, is investigating Republican Party fundraising. They've targeted state legislators, citizens involved in this alternative elector dispute before 2020, which happens virtually every election, every federal or presidential election. There are disputes about electors. It's what happens. Usually Democrats do it. But when Republicans do it, it's a different thing. And I testified to the grand jury about this. And it's funny, they were kind of aghast when I said, I was very worried in 2020 because Democrats were saying that they wanted to dispute the election and were willing to engage in secession by certain states unless the Electoral College votes went their way. They didn't seem interested in that seditious conspiracy. Isn't that so? They've got evidence, right? I gave them evidence to the grand jury that Democrats are planning civil unrest and civil war. Oh, did they bring in those folks responsible? Oh, guess who was doing some of that planning? John Podesta, who's currently in the Biden White House.
So, Tom, you get up in the morning. You're lifting, Cadillacs. And you're like, oh, gotta get into shape. And you're thinking about what's going on. Are you optimistic or pessimistic?
Well, as a Christian, I'm optimistic. As a citizen, I'm a bit pessimistic because I kind of see our republic tottering. And I'm fearful we'll lose it. If it becomes the norm that the Justice Department can prosecute the former president and the number one candidate for president against the current president at the drop of a hat, and if that becomes the norm, we're no different than Putin's Moscow and Xi's Beijing. That's how you lose a republic. When the we've had political prosecutions in the past out of the Justice Department. We know that, and abuses. But nothing where it's been so brazen and naked and the veil's been lifted that you go to jail if you oppose us. And you really have to go back to the early part of the last century under Woodrow Wilson to see anything comparable, where they jailed all of his political opponents. Here we didn't have but even then you didn't have the major party candidate jailed. And this is what they want to do. They want to jail Trump before the election. And the idea that would be happening in America is something that ought to concern us, because if it happens, you have to wonder if we, quote, are America anymore.
Are we? I think we are very close on that line, one way or another. I don't know, but we're very close. Tom, what is the thing that you can instruct us to do? What is it we can do? I mean, I look at the 16 Republicans indicted, in Michigan. I mean, I would love to see a whole bunch of Republicans standing up in Michigan saying, hey, fine, if that's what you're going to do, we've just doubled our size and we're taking those roles and we're involving ourselves, something that shows that you're not going to take one out without two replacing. We have to be a hydra.
Well, certainly the left is very concerned about elections in 2024 and them being, they're willing to rig them again. So they want to scare us off from participating in the election process. And so no American should be frightened off by this. I mean, if they value their country, they still have to take that risk and participate in the public policy process, certainly as it relates to elections. We've got right now this kind of window in the House where they're figuring out what to do about funding. Ask your member of Congress, what are you going to do to stop this? And I don't want a report. I don't want a hearing. We know what's going on, and you're funding it. You're funding this jailing of Trump. You're funding this prosecution of citizens for exercising their First Amendment rights, which isn't just about free speech. The other part of exercising your First Amendment rights means the right to petition your government. And that goes to the heart of these election disputes. And why is the House going to fund this? Are they going to continue to fund this? Speaker McCarthy, are you going to shut it down? He could shut down, technically, the Jack Smith investigation, just defund it. Say no money being spent this year on prosecuting Trump or anything under Jack Smith's office, or maybe just shut it down in perpetuity. Demand a special counsel. Impeach Biden. Escalate it in terms of this is important to the rule of law. We see what you're doing, and we're going to do everything we can under the Constitution to stop, prevent, and hold you accountable.
Yeah, I just cannot sit here and tolerate the stories about the weaponization of government. We hear another one. Here's another whistleblower. What are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? We got it. Tom Fitton, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome, Glenn. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You bet. Tom Fitton from judicialwatch.org.